Okay, we are a little bit behind, but I think we are okay. Okay, welcome once again. Welcome everyone. Welcome to Grace United Methodist Church. My name is Peter Hyunho Park, pastor of this church, and we are delighted to have you here tonight. And today's presentation is second of Grace Talks, which is Grace UMC's public lecture series where we invite, inspire, and encourage our community members. Today we have Katherine Parker as our featured guest and speaker, and I found the following wonderful introduction of Katherine on UMC Global Ministries website. And Katherine, it'll be pretty long, okay? So feel free to sit down, okay? Katherine T. Parker is a missionary with the General Board of Global Ministries of the United Methodist Church, serving as a Health and Community Transformation Advisor with the United Mission to Nepal, UMN. The Ecumenical Ministry of UMN has a vision of a fullness of life for all in a transformed Nepali society. In Nepal since 2013, Katherine was previously in Cambodia with the Community Health and Agricultural Development Program of the Methodist Mission there. She has been a missionary since 2007 and was the mission intern for 3 years beginning in 2000 with the Asian Rural Institute in Japan and Practical Farmers of Iowa in the United States. Katherine attended Harvey Mudd College in Claremont, California, where she graduated in 2000 with a Bachelor of Science degree in biology. By the way, I want you to know that Harvey Mudd College is really good school. It's really outstanding school. Her Master of Science degree, also in biology, is from California State University in Sacramento. Her thesis was on bacterial contamination of drinking water in rural Ghana. Katherine's home church is Mount Tamalpais. Okay. Tamalpais United Methodist Church in Mill Valley, California, and she is a proud member of our own Cal Nevada Annual Conference. And before we begin, let me say a few words of thanks to Katherine. Before I contacted Howard Parker, Katherine, your father, right? Howard Parker, Katherine's father, and conference secretary for Global Ministries, I hesitated a little bit because Grace is not a big church, not able to provide big crowd, big audience, and not able to provide sizable contribution for her mission. But I'm glad you came here all the way from Nepal to California and to Grace in the midst of your busy schedule. For that, we are deeply grateful. And thank you. And now, let's welcome tonight's speaker, Katherine Parker.
Thank you. Are we gonna sing or anything, or
We're gonna sing later.
Later? Okay, got it. Now I have to learn how has to turn. Aha. There we go. Yay. One more. There we go. It is a joy to be here. The United Methodist Church is a connectional church. We don't have large congregations mostly. We have lots of little congregations, lots of intimate families. I think that's what it means to be the church, to be the people of God, is to be family. And it is a real privilege for me as a United Methodist missionary to get this opportunity every 3 years to come back to the U.S. and to go around. I've been in Iowa, I've been in New Jersey, I've been in Oregon, now I get to spend some time here in California. I was in Colorado last week. We have amazing congregations in this church, and it is a privilege to spend tonight with you. So thank you all for being here and for being part of a connectional church. In the United Methodist Church, We have 350 missionaries from everywhere to everywhere. And I've served now for 15 years, and the last 6 of those have been in Nepal. I wanted to start tonight with a little bit of a history of how we got involved as the Methodist Church in Nepal, and then share with you a little bit about what that ministry looks like these days. You heard a little about our vision. Our vision in the United Mission to Nepal is for fullness of life for all in a transformed Nepali society. And we'll come back to that, but I thought I'm going to skip back and forth. I'm not good at getting my slides in the right order. Aha, here we go. Here's a little map. I was never good at geography, so I like to start with a little geography. Nepal, here's the globe. Here we got India here, China over here, and Nepal is this little tiny country nestled up in the Himalayan mountains in between those 2 superpowers. So Nepal is bordered on 3 sides by India, and by 1 side by Tibet. It's about 1/4 the size of California. Also kind of looks like California turned on its side. California has 40 million people. Nepal has almost 30 million. So 3/4 the people in 1/4 the size. It is a very diverse place. It's got all kinds of diversity. It's got geographical diversity. Nepal starts down here. The border with India is called the Terai. That's the lowlands. That starts at just above sea level, goes up to about 4,000 feet. 60% of the population lives down there in the Terai. Nepal's at the latitude of southern Florida. So the Terai is hot and humid. It's kind of, when you think about Delhi and about the dense population and the humidity in the summer, that's the Terai also. The middle section here is called the Pahad, the middle hills. That's from 3,000 up to about 7,000 feet. About 30% of the population lives in the middle hills and the political power. Kathmandu, capital city over here. I work over here in Rukam. We'll get back to that. The last section, which is this section that borders with Tibet, is called the Himal zone. Himal means snowy mountain in Nepali. So Himalayas come from that. And about 10 to 15% of the population lives above 7,000 feet. There are villages at 14,000, 15,000 feet. Obviously, nobody lives at 29,000 feet at the top of Mount Everest. But it does go all the way up. Lot of geographical diversity. A lot of ethnic diversity as well. 12 major ethnic groups in the country. 123 languages are spoken. Very diverse. Very interesting place. But because it is up there in the mountains, it has also historically been very isolated. Went through about a 350-year period of political isolation. After the monarchy unified Nepal, it became very isolated. Folks didn't come in. Few Nepalis left. But in the late 1940s, that started to change. There was a Rana regime that was kind of an oligarchy, but they were pushed out, and the monarchy came back into full power, and Nepal started to open its doors. That's when you see the first expeditions to climb Mount Everest from the Nepal side. Earlier attempts had been from the Tibet side. Nepalis also started to leave the country. They went to work as Gorkhas of the British Army. They went to work in Darjeeling, in India, Northeast India, in the tea plantations. And in those spaces outside of Nepal, they encountered Christ. And their lives were changed. And it was these Nepalis, at a time when the country was still very closed, who started coming back to their home country to share with their neighbors, their families, their brothers and sisters about the good news of knowing God in Christ. I had the privilege of meeting Dr. Rangang. He passed away, I think, 2 years ago now. I worked with his niece in the United Mission to Nepal. Dr. Rangang was someone like this. His family moved to Darjeeling. His father was the first to encounter Christ, converted. And when Dr. Rangan was 5 years old, they came back to Kathmandu. They tried to get a business started, tried to reestablish themselves, but they got pushed out because they were Christian. But when Dr. Rangan was in his early 20s, there in the early 1950s, he came back to Kathmandu and started the first Protestant Christian church in the Kathmandu Valley. I say that because there was a Catholic church about 800 years ago in Nepal, but that got kicked out, so you know how those things go, right? But the modern Christian movement in Nepal is one that has been led by Nepalis. What an amazing story. As the global Christian community, we of course have been praying for opportunities to participate in this. And that came in the form of some Methodist missionaries working in Woodstock, which is a place up in northwest India. Their names was Bob, Robert, and Bethel Fleming. And Bob was an ornithologist, a bird scientist. So he got permission from the King of Nepal to come into the country on a bird collecting expedition for the British Museum. His wife Bethel, a medical doctor, Carl Freeberg, another doctor, came along, treated people. At the end of that, they stopped in Kathmandu to thank the king for permission, right, to come into the country. He said, "We see there's great need for medical care. Would you allow us to come back and start a hospital?" King said, "Yes, but." Always has to be a but. King says, "I don't want all you Christians with all your different denominations, all your wiggledy-piggledy ways. You can't be coming in here helter-skelter," my paraphrase. He says, "You have to come in under one umbrella." So we got together with 8 different mission agencies to form the United Mission to Nepal. We now have 35 global partners. We've got the Finnish Evangelical Lutheran Mission. We've got the Baptists from Australia. We've got my friend Hazel Fong. She's from Hong Kong. Cedar Fund, our partner from there. What an amazing ecumenical partnership. Working together with this vision of fullness of life for all in a transformed Nepali society. That John 10:10 promise, right? Life in all its abundance. But you also hear our Methodist influence, right? Even when we're working ecumenically, we can influence. Our Methodist mission is to make disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. Here's that word, transformation. So we came in, not to start congregations. That was being done by Dr. Rangan and others. Not to take leadership in those congregations. Again, our Nepali brothers and sisters in Christ. We're taking leadership. And in fact, Nepal has continued to be a closed country. They only decriminalized conversion about 12 years ago. So until 12 years ago, if you were baptized, you could be imprisoned for a year. Pastors could be imprisoned for 7 years. That ended, thankfully, 12 years ago, but proselytization is still not as, Nepal is nominally secular, but we'll talk a little bit more about that. So changes. But we were there. We have been there for 65 years as an open witness to the global Christian connection in partnership with our Nepali brothers and sisters in Christ. Now, partnership, we have a word for it. The Nepali word is Sangsangai, which even the internet will tell you means togetherness. Hand in hand together. And that has been our mission, Sangsangai. So Nepal has gone through a lot of political changes. There was that opening up of the country in the 1940s, 1950s. Then there was a 10-year-long civil war in the late 90s, early 2000s. That ousted the monarchy. Nepal was the only Hindu theocracy in the world, the only Hindu government. Monarchy was out. Secularism nominally has come in. About 4 years ago, Nepal got a constitution written. Yay! They have formed a federalist democracy, which we are also. That means that they distribute power to the local level, like we do to the states. But Nepal's constitution distributes more power to the local level than any other constitution currently in the world. That's pretty exciting. But it's challenging, because this is a new democracy. And last year, for the first time in almost 20 years, we had local elections. So we got a lot of new leaders, not a lot of experience. A lot of aspirations, not a lot of money. But a lot of new laws coming in. So a lot of confusion, but a lot of hope. And I hope you'll hear some of that in our stories. Oh, let's see. I'll come back to that. So our mission, this mission is inspired by the love and teachings of Jesus Christ. It is in partnership, that's Sangsangai, in partnership with the Christian community and others in Nepal and worldwide. Together we seek to serve the people of Nepal, especially those living in poverty. There are 3 areas that we look. We seek to pursue peace and justice, to address the root causes of poverty, and to make Christ known by word and life. This is the team I work with. We have, in the United Mission to Nepal these days, we're a pretty good-sized organization. We have 155 Nepali staff. We have 25 missionary staff working in community development. We also run 2 hospitals. We have 300-400 staff, Nepali staff, and about 25 missionary staff in our 2 hospitals. At our 60th anniversary, we celebrated 100 projects and institutions that we've started that are now local. We've started 7 hospitals. 5 of those are now community hospitals, including Patton Hospital, started by Bethel Fleming. It is now the premier community hospital for the southern part of the Kathmandu Valley. So we like to start things. We like to set them free, let them continue. So we're smaller than we have been, but we're still a good-sized organization. We have 8 offices throughout the country. And this is the team that I work with in Rukum. Tarahang Tawa is our team leader. When we talk about addressing the root causes of poverty, we want to remember that poverty is not just economic lack. Poverty is more than that. Poverty is an interwoven web of factors. Things like despair and oppression and injustice and shame and conflict, environmental degradation. These are the things that keep people locked in poverty. And so today we don't start new institutions. Today we work through local community-based organizations to help them vision what does fullness of life look like for them. We sit with groups of women, with youth, with farmers, and we talk about it in terms of all of these factors. Oh, there's some more organizational statistics and our values. So now that I'm back here to this map slide, here's Kathmandu. These are all of our field offices, and I work out here in Rukum. So some of you have asked, how do you get to Nepal? Well, Nepal is basically the other side of the globe. So you can go either direction. From Atlanta, where our headquarters for global ministries are, I usually fly either to the Middle East, Dubai, Qatar, or to Istanbul. It's about 14 hours there, and it's another 5-6 on to Nepal, plus your layover. We're looking at 28, 30 hours of travel. From San Francisco, I usually fly west. If I'm lucky, I go through Seoul. Otherwise, I go through Guangzhou or, somewhere in China, at Canton. Again, 12, 14 hours there, another 5-6 on to Kathmandu. From Kathmandu, where I actually do spend about a third of my time, once a week, there is a flight from Kathmandu to Rukum. It's on a Twin Otter. You know that plane? That's a twin propeller 18-seat plane. Takes an hour and 15 minutes. And you need a little tiny plane because we got a little tiny runway on the side of the hill, and at the end of the runway, you better have stopped. If there's rain in the monsoon season, that flight gets canceled. If the flight's full, we can't get on it. We drive down to Nepalganj, about an 8-hour drive on nominally paved roads, several flights a day back to Kathmandu. And sometimes, I've driven about 3 times. You drive down, you go along the lowland, you go back up and over. It's about 24 hours of driving, so 2 to 3 days to drive. Nepal's not an easy place to get around. That gets us out to Rukam. Now, here is our beautiful Sisne Himal, Mount Sisne. Sisne, I don't actually know what Sisne means, but it sounds to my ear the same as the word for nettle, which we eat a lot of nettles. So Sisne and Sisne, don't ask me what the difference is, but I call it the Nettle Mountain. So the big mountains in Nepal, those are the 8,000 meter mountains, the 24,000 foot mountains. Sisne Himal's only a 7,000 meter mountain, 21,000 feet. Kind of a baby mountain by Nepal standards, but still beautiful. So this is Rukam. Rukam has also gone through a lot of political changes with all of this upheaval. With the new constitution coming in, they changed stuff, and Rukam used to be one district. It's now been divided into 2, mostly on ethnic lines. Again, that diversity coming in, right? Rukam West is predominantly Hill Chetri, which is one of the dominant ethnic groups in the country. Rukam East is mostly Kam Mugar, which is one of the ethnic minority groups in the country. And so we work with both, and we'll come back to that. But we got here on our plane to Musikot. And from Musikot is where I stay. I've got a room there in the district headquarters. I think I have a picture. Here's our district headquarters. This is the view from our office balcony over to the market center. Yes?
What is the elevation?
5,500 feet.
Oh,
Yeah, so not too bad, right? And the snow doesn't really stick until 7,000 or 8,000 feet. So we're below the snow level, but it still gets cold in the winter. So that's Rukam. And from here, I do a lot of work up here in the Atbiskop region and over here in Taxera, Rangsi, and Kakri. So to get from Musikot, we get in our Jeep. We do have a Jeep. Very appreciative of this. And we drive on the dirt road, Dirt Mountain Road. If we can, we drive 6 hours, and then we have to walk about 2 hours to get to Shala. But that goes over an 11,000 foot pass. So in the winter, there's ice. In the summer, the monsoon rains come, and there's mud and landslides, and the Jeep often gets stuck about 3 hours up. Then we have to start walking. So I've walked 10, 11 hours in the rain to get to Shala. So not easy places to get to, and that's for me, right? With all of the resources and, well, I should mention, the mules can make it in about 6 hours. I'm a little slower. But still, that's a long ways, right? And it's challenging, and we'll talk about those challenges as we go on as well. We also can take the Jeep out over here to Taxera. That's only a 9,000 foot pass, but it's about 7, 8 hours in the Jeep to get there. Here we are back at. But what does it look like, this Sangsangai, when we're out in these villages? Well, the first part of Sangsangai is learning together, right? I shared with you that Rukam was divided on ethnic lines, and there are 123 languages. Only 60% of the population speaks Nepali as their first language. And the government, for about 10, 15 years, had this brilliant, being sarcastic, brilliant idea to have Nepali-only education. We tried that English-only education here. Didn't work here, it doesn't work in Nepal. Imagine you're a child from the Kam Mugar community. You speak Kam at home. What is it like to show up at 5, 6 years old at school and be expected to learn in a foreign language? It's pretty hard. So after a lot of advocacy, the government changed that policy. We now have multilingual education. So for the last 3-4 years, we've been working with teachers in Rukam East to translate the national curriculum from Nepali into the Kham-Magar language. We started with 8 schools. This young girl's showing off textbook for grade 2, printed in parallel in Nepali and Kham-Magar, so that children can learn their literacy in their own language, but at the same time be introduced to Nepali. So by the time they get to 4th grade, they're ready to study fully in Nepali. It's been great. We've seen attendance go up. Test scores also have gone up. Schools are hiring teachers from the local community. How important that is also for children to see a teacher from their own community in that position of leadership. Along with that, we do train the teachers, because Nepal has an education system similar to the British. So there's this very important exam you take at the end of 10th grade that determines what's going to happen next. Well, if you pass that exam, you're now qualified to teach up to grade 5. Those of you who spend time in the classroom know that's a little challenging. So we talk with the teachers. We talk about how do you establish discipline in your classroom without using corporal punishment? How do we start to have interactive learning? Kul Bahadur, who's our staff, who runs this, he tells me that run to the front of the classroom and bingo game are 2 of the most popular interactive learnings. My role in this is really in the area of program development, monitoring, and evaluation. So I go out, we do focus groups, we develop a program, and then a couple months later I get to come back and see what's happening. And I love it when we see the children singing and dancing and interacting with each other in this learning environment. Along with that, we improve the classrooms. We work with the school management committee to make a plan of what we want to do. And I have some brochures, I'll share those with you at the end, that talks a little bit more about this. You might have seen some of the videos, some of the stone buildings, right? Nepal schools are mostly stone, wattle and daub, that mud and dung mortar, packed dirt floor. They get pretty cold in the winter. So through support from churches like yourself, we give the school a grant of $300 to improve 1 classroom. First thing they do is to put wood paneling down on the floors. That little elevated wood, amazing how much warmer that makes the classroom. Put some wood paneling on the walls or paint the walls. Start to introduce interactive teaching aids as well. These incremental improvements. I'm a conservation biologist by training, so water microbiology is my area. So I love water sanitation and hygiene. I work a lot in a variety of aspects, but I love it when we put a hygiene station into the classroom. Hygiene station, very important for learning about all those things. But after doing some monitoring, I discovered the most important part of the hygiene station is not what I thought it was at first. Any guesses? Hand washing. Hand washing the eye is critical. Teeth brushing. All of these are important. What I found out is that this mirror is critical. A lot of kids don't have a mirror at home. So you come to school and you get to see. Did I brush my hair this morning? We have skin disease problems in the winter because who wants to wash with cold water? But did I wash my face? Yeah, who wants to wash with cold water? or did I brush my hair this morning? This kind of reinforcement, this kind of feedback is so important in behavior change. We work in the schools also with what we call child clubs. That's a little misnomer. They're 10 to 16-year-olds. They're kind of youth groups, but we call them child clubs. So we work with the youth to organize, We train them how to do a wall magazine. That's a school magazine they post on the wall, write little articles about what's going on in the community. They organize social activities for the other school members, some service projects. We also identify our peer educators out of this program. We do some merit scholarships, mostly for girls from Dalit, which is so-called low caste or untouchable caste. Those are our need-based scholarships, but we also give merit scholarships. That's a small scholarship to our peer educators who they then do a weekly session, a 1-hour session with the little kids, or with their peers. We have an adolescent sexual reproductive health program that we do. Kids talk to each other, right? So you want to make sure they're passing on the correct information. But they also teach to the younger kids. This is where we get the soap out, right? We teach about hand washing. We teach about child rights. We teach about nutrition. And it's really exciting to see what starts to happen when the children start to take this kind of leadership. So we took our plane into Ruka, we got on the Jeep, we went up over our 8,000-foot pass, and luckily we only had to walk 2 hours, and we got to Shala. We've been working with the school there. We worked with the school management committee to build a fence around the school to keep the cows out. You don't want those cows wandering through. Well, the kids looked around and they said, oh, look, we've got some open space at the back of the school. They had just done a lesson on kitchen gardening. You know, growing vegetables in front of your house. They said, well, could we have a kitchen garden at school? The head teacher, their principal, said, yes. He even bought the seeds out of his own money for them. They planted a kitchen garden. Shala School goes up to grade 7, so they participate in the World Food Program. That provides rice, lentils, and oil. They make what we call khichdi, a mixed rice and lentil midday snack. But now that the children are growing a garden, they're putting fresh vegetables into that. Wow, what leadership. From Shala, we walk along the ridge line to get to Kadi. The kids can make it in about 2 hours, takes me about 4. Kadi's the big school in the area, the big community. The school there goes up to grade 10. It feeds in from about 5 surrounding villages. So we also give the child club about $100 a year to do social activities, fun things. The Kadi kids invited all the neighboring schools in for a Children's Day celebration. We had games, we had a quiz program, we had a parade. Nepalis love a parade. They walked through the cornfields. They had all these little signs about come to school. My favorite was come to school with clean hair. From Kadi, we keep walking along the ridge. Kids can go about 4 hours, me 6, 7 hours, to get to Patagao. Patagao is a pretty small village, but it's a very dispersed village. Houses are a bit farther apart from each other. And so the kids there, some of them are coming 1-2 hours in to get to the local school. And well, when you're walking to school, you meet up with your friends and you walk together. And you stop by the river, and you start to play, and you don't quite make it to school. So the Patagao kids, when we talked with them, they said, well, can we use our $100 to buy some sports equipment? Yeah. So they bought some badminton, some soccer balls. Now the kids are coming early to school to play. Yeah. What a creative response. Isn't it amazing what happens when we give children the opportunity to not only see the needs in their community, but to make decisions about how to respond? Excuse me. I love to see what the kids do. We also partner with Microsoft in bringing computer labs in. Microsoft provides the servers, the monitors, the school board, the PTA builds the desks, and local churches will sponsor the solar panels and the transportation to get them in. No electricity out here, right? So we got to bring the solar panels in. This is really helpful also because Not only do the children have access to the computers, but now community members can also use the computer lab. They have to pay a little money. But in Nepal, the government only gives funding for one teacher for every 50 students. Patiga has 150 students, 3 teachers. That's up to grade 5. So you can imagine, right? The teachers are going back and forth. This is your one-room school. But with a computer lab, with that extra income, the school management committee can hire another teacher. We're always looking for this kind of synergistic response that has multiple benefits. And so we journey together. Our peace-building team works in a lot of different areas. Our peace-building team works in conflict resolution. They work in trauma healing, which is part of our mental health program. They work in gender equity, gender-based violence, human trafficking, and also on the issue of disability. I mentioned that we work through local partners. We have 4 community-based organizations in Rukam that are implementing this work. And one of them is an organization made up entirely of people who themselves have a disability. And they're out in the community, advocating, raising awareness, linking people into services. In Nepal, there's a lot of superstition, as there often is in places where people don't have a lot of access and exposure. And I've heard parents tell me, my neighbors treat me as if I'm cursed, or as if our family is cursed because we have a child with a special need. And this often grows out of despair, lack of knowledge about treatment opportunities. 1 in 100 children in Nepal are born with clubfoot. Partly environmental, partly genetic. They're not really sure what it is. That's very treatable. But if you've never left your village, if you've never left Shala, could you imagine traveling with your child up and over, then down the jeep, then you got to get in a bus and go down to Nepalganj, to the big city? That's pretty scary. So our partners, they say, we'll accompany you. We'll make that journey with you. We'll have somebody to meet you. And it's transformative, right? It's transformative for the child, it's transformative to the family, it's also transformative for the community. We got a whole shipping container full of these pet carts, personal energy transportation carts. These are hand-cranked wheelchairs built by our United Methodist Men's Network. When you see a child moving through the community, that changes your attitude. That child is seen with dignity, seen as a full member. That changes the attitude towards how the next child is treated. Changing attitudes. And this is how we grow, right? We grow together. As a biologist, I work a lot with our health team. You may remember Nothing But Nets. Imagine no malaria. We keep changing the name of it. Now we call it abundant health, as we look to address childhood illnesses, childhood challenges. Nepal's done a great job in the last 20 years of bringing down childhood mortality, death under the age of 5. That's great. Neonatal mortality is still very high in Nepal. That's death in the first 5 days of life. There's a lot of complicated factors, right? We've got early marriage or child marriage that leads to early pregnancy. We've got anemia among mothers. We've got low birth weight. A lot of women giving birth at home. In a lot of communities, 40 to 60% of the women are still giving birth at home. And oftentimes, again, these superstitions come in. There's a practice of chaupadi, that's ritual purity around menstruation. And chaupadi means that when you're menstruating, when you're giving birth, you can't touch another person, you can't touch the water tap, you can't touch the cow. You have to sleep outside in the chaupadi shed, which is basically the goat shed. These are some of the complicated factors. But we've been working with a grant through the Abundant Health Initiative on addressing them. We work with the Health Post. So in Rukum, we do have a hospital in Musikot. We've got 2 doctors. When you get out to Shala, we've got a health post. A health post serves the same as the schools, right? Serves several villages, about 5 villages, about 8,000 people. In the health post, we have a medical officer. That's a 2-year post-high school education. And we've got 2 auxiliary nurse midwives. That's a 10-month post-high school education. So we're working with the health post. We send those nurse midwives to our hospital in Tansen, where they get an additional 3-month skilled birth attendant training. We bring in a birthing bed, an autoclave, try to upgrade the facilities. We work with the female community health volunteers. These are women who have a 3rd to 5th grade education, but they're leaders, right? They're out. They're raising awareness on birth preparedness. They're accompanying women into the health post for their prenatal checkups, encouraging them to get back for their vaccinations. This is all working together. This picture is taken out in Taxera. It is a village out in Rukum East. It's about a 7-8 hour Jeep ride from Musikot, over at that 9,000-foot pass. This woman has come in for her vaccination campaign. Yay. I was out in Taxera about a year ago with Pradeep, who's our our health officer. We'd come out to do a work with the child club. We had a hygiene, a sanitation workshop. We were testing the water. We were sewing washable menstrual pads. Great 3-day program. We did it there. We did it at Rangsi. Great. Worked out well. But that first day when we arrived, we'd driven all day, right? We're getting out of the Jeep, stretching our legs. Our host welcomes us in, offers us a cup of tea. We're sitting down. As we do, a woman also comes in to the little tea house. She sits down, she's really quiet, and she's really pale. We start talking to her. She's just walked 6-7 hours from her village to get to Taxera, which is the end of the road, because she's bleeding. She started to miscarry. Her family is really compassionate. They've come up with the $70 it takes to hire a Jeep to go back to Musikot. And her brother is going around the village looking for a driver who's willing to drive all night, because it's 4 or 5 in the afternoon. We go with her over to the health post, brand new auxiliary nurse midwife, not confident to put an IV in. Luckily, Pradeep is medically trained, because I'm not, so he's coaching her to get an IV in, to get some fluids into her. We have the direct cell phone number for the OB doctor at the hospital in Musikot. So we call him up. We say, her brother's found a Jeep. They're coming. He says, well, stay awake. We'll be ready for them. And praise God that her life was saved. This was one visit that I made out to Taxera. Unfortunately, this is not an uncommon story. In fact, one of the challenges in Taxera is that women give birth en route to the health post. So the community has responded. They've built a waiting mother's room. Just a simple, 14 by 14 stone building, so mothers can come in early. With support from the Abundant Health Initiative, we've been able to establish an emergency obstetrics fund so that families can take a no-interest loan to get that transportation. This is Sangsangai. This is togetherness. It takes those female community health volunteers being out, raising awareness. It takes a Jeep driver who's willing to drive. It takes a community that will build that waiting mother's room. And we can contribute too. Sangsangai. Togetherness. That's sharing together. I have one more story to give you, to leave us on a more exciting note. Lot of political changes in Nepal. mentioned a lot of new laws coming into play. A new law introduced last year says that land can be registered now in two people's names. You can have two people's names on the land title. This is the first husband and wife in Rukum district to register their land in both spouses' names. Think about what that means for women to have equal access to the family resources. Pretty amazing. Christians may only be 1.5% of the Nepali population, but we have an opportunity to be salt and light. What a proud couple. What a model they are for their community. We can be proud of them as well. What a privilege to share this vision of fullness of life for all. And as we are individually transformed, to transform our society together. Sangsangai. A lot of challenges, but a lot of hope. What an amazing world, what an amazing time to be in Nepal. Few questions? So I leave you with that. As you heard, yes?
Was it a big earthquake that you had to respond to?
Yeah.
With more of a local government, was there a response or?
Well, they only restructured towards this federalist democracy 2 years ago. So after the earthquake, we didn't yet have the new constitution with the local power. This is actually a very new thing. The earthquake happened 4 years ago, or 4 years ago. The new constitution came in 6 months after that. And the federalist power distribution didn't come in until 2 years ago. So it's been a process. There are 75 districts in Nepal. 11 of them were impacted by the earthquake, including Kathmandu and Dading, where we've been working for the last 30, 40 years. So our earthquake response was in the Dading district, which was the fourth most affected district by the earthquake, and particularly in the far northern part. So we did a lot of work, especially initially, to rebuild the trails, to get the bridges rebuilt so that the mules could get back in, so we could bring supplies in. We trained masons in earthquake-resistant masonry. We did a lot of work to rebuild schools as well as health posts. So we are coming to the end of sort of our recovery phase. We did an initial response of food aid to over 100,000 people. Mostly, well, not mostly, a lot of it by helicopter, airlifting supplies in before the trails and roads were rebuilt. And then we have continued both with the mental health response, livelihood response, and this construction. We're coming to the end of our recovery phase, and we are phasing now into more sort of long-term development work. So it's, it continues to shift. There have been challenges in that, as there are in any disaster, right? The main challenge being that the Nepal government is highly controlling, and we were not given permission to help rebuild individual family homes, which was really disappointing to us. We wanted to rebuild the poorest 20% of the families in 5 wards in this far northern region, and the government said, well, if you're going to rebuild individual homes, you have to rebuild everyone's home in the ward and only one ward. And we said that doesn't match our values. So in the end, we ended up shifting that more towards rebuilding more schools instead. So we really focused in that regard. So there have been a lot of challenges, but it is moving forward. Yeah, and we do a lot of disaster risk reduction and earthquake preparedness work out in Rukum, because Rukum was not affected by the earthquake, but it is still highly earthquake vulnerable. So we're doing a lot of that risk reduction education right now. Back, and then 2, and then 3. Yes?
Well, Is Nepal under the control of China?
Nepal is not under the control of China. Nepal has a very delicate balance between China and India. So it kind of plays off of both. Nepal has never been what we would call land colonized, so it's never been controlled by a foreign government. Yeah. And I don't think that China will come into Nepal the way it has come into Tibet, because the land border with India is very permeable, and so India would take it as a threat from China if China came into Nepal. Nepal is much more likely to be invaded by India, because Nepal has a whole lot of very important Hindu pilgrimage sites in it. And right now, with Modi as the Prime Minister of India, who's an extremely conservative Prime Minister, his conservative government has had a lot of negative, in my opinion, negative impacts on Nepal. Because Nepal is for India the way Israel is for the Zionists and the sort of fundamentalist Christians. So that, I think, don't repeat any of this, right? Because my political position there is also very tenuous. And this is just my attitude. But I'm much more worried about the fundamentalist government in control of India right now than I am particularly, because China would have to come over the Himalayas. And that's less likely to happen. Yes?
When there are disasters, do you have, does the Salvation Army or the Red Cross interface with your group to any extent?
We all coordinate. There's a lot of coordination, and usually the United Nations does the coordination for that. In Nepal, we are also part of the Association of International NGOs. So we're one of the oldest NGOs, non-governmental organizations in Nepal, but we work and we used to be the largest. Back in the 80s, we had 300 missionaries and 5,000 Nepali staff. That's when we had the 7 hospitals. We built 2 major hydroelectric dams. Now we're much smaller, and organizations like Save the Children or Red Cross are larger than us. Organizations like Samaritans. Well, we now have 35 global partners. So Samaritan's Purse. I'm trying to think who all of our partners, but a lot of these organizations work through the United Nations. So UMCOR works through the United Mission to Nepal. They don't have a separate office in Nepal. And that's true for our global partners.
Doctors Without Borders, things like that.
Doctors Without Borders were there during the war, but they're no longer welcome. Because that's what they do, right? They come in regardless of political affiliation and provide medical care. However, they provided medical care in such a way that the current political government will not give them permission to be there long term. But they were there at a very critical time in some very critical places. So, it's always trade-offs, right? You make those choices. Yeah. Yeah.
When appropriate, how did you end up becoming a missionary?
Yeah.
What took you to Nepal?
So I grew up in a family with deep roots in Methodism. My great-great-granduncle, so 5 generations back, founded the first evangelical church of Seattle, which became EUB, which became First United Methodist Church of Seattle. So that's my Methodist pedigree. So, and I have lots of clergy in my family. So I was raised with the understanding that whatever we do with our vocation is how we serve God, by serving our neighbor. But neither of my parents are clergy, and I never thought that you have to do that through the church. But this idea of vocation was definitely something that was always talked about. So I was interested in science. I was interested in pushing the forefront of human knowledge. But when I was studying, I got a little disillusioned with the research I was doing. I thought it was going to help seed companies with their profits, which is not a bad thing, but it wasn't necessarily helping farmers on the margins. And so I'm like, well, what do I do? Do I keep doing this, which is interesting, or do I look for something else? And I thought, I'll go do Peace Corps for a little while. And my cousin, who was the volunteer mission coordinator for the Oregon, Idaho conference, said, well, the United Methodist Church has a program for young adults. We now call it Global Mission Fellows. Why don't you do that? And so I signed up. It's 3 years of service. Went to the Asian Rural Institute in Japan. Has this vision to build an environmentally healthy, just, and peaceful world where every person could live to his or her fullest potential. And that changed my life. I said, wow, okay, I get it now. I came back, I worked with Practical Farmers of Iowa. I was really interested in how we cycled nutrients in the farms. I went back to graduate school to study microbiology, was really interested in participatory research and all of this. Was in Ghana doing research, and I got a call. Because in the United Methodist Church, we send missionaries where they are invited. And the Asian Rural Institute called me up. They said, the United Methodist Church has agreed to send us another missionary. They're another ecumenical organization. And they said, we want you to apply and come back and work for us. This was not on my radar, right? I mean, we could talk about, the spiritual development, right? But I wasn't thinking this. I said, wow, this was an organization that touched me, that changed me. So I got back from my year in Ghana, landed, interviewed with the Asian Rural Institute, and said, yeah, I could do this. I sent in my application to Global Ministries to become a missionary. Within a month, they had flown me out to New York then to be interviewed. And they said, well, we know that we promised to send somebody to the Asian Rural Institute, and we know they recruited you, but we need someone with your skills in Cambodia. And I said, where's Cambodia? But I feel very grateful to have been called. And to have been able to answer this call through the church. It is a great privilege to be able to do this work connectionally. Because I have been sent by you to do this, and that is a real honor for me. So thank you. So yes. Yeah. I know we're over time. I'll just give 2 minutes, and then we'll, because I want to invite you to come up and look at this picture afterwards. This picture is painted by a man named Binod. Binod is a Thangka painter. Thangka is a traditional style of prayer in the Himalayan Buddhist style. In the Himalayan Buddhist style, movement is prayer. That's where you get the prayer flags, right? The water wheels. And so it is the act of painting that is a prayer. Well, Binod encountered Christ, became a Christian, and then he says, well, my profession is painting Thangkas. What am I going to do? I guess I'm going to keep painting them. So as far as I know, he is the only Christian Thangka painter in Nepal. Instead of painting the life of Buddha, he paints the life of Jesus. And it is an amazing piece of theology to look at how he has depicted the life of Jesus with the star, the light coming down at the birth, different aspects of Jesus' life, through the crucifixion in the upper room, and then you have the ascension, the light going up into the universe at the ascension. So through the life of Jesus, the light is multiplied in the world. What an amazing theology. So please come up afterwards and take a look at it. Sometimes I quiz the children to see if they can identify all the Bible verses. It's pretty fun to see what he has chosen there. But just another wonderful little piece. Thank you all for coming out tonight, for being connectional. This is wonderful.
Thank you. Oh yes, please write to Grace, and then we'll collect that and then send it. So text to Grace if they are giving it. We will send everything to the conference. So text if you write it, Grace, make it to Grace. Yeah. cash. Excuse me. Yeah, checks and cash. Anything. We
No.
Together we stand, united by love, uniting God's world to the glorious deeds. We work and we pray with sorrow and joy, extending your love to the last and the least. We sing to recall what we can afford, a lamp for the heart and a light for the feet. We learn year by year to live all shine through, until we see Christ in person we welcome the sun, the well we love more, the busy, the lonely, and all who we care. We offer a home to those who will come, our expert to help us what they do there. Together by grace we witness and learn, remembering Jesus in whom we all share. Together we stand in spirit and truth, remembering what is the strength of our song.
And I'll also have some contact information for me and brochures afterwards as well. Yeah.
So let me conclude tonight's gathering with a prayer. Let's pray. Dear God, we give thanks for giving us life, faith, and hope through your Son, Jesus Christ. Tonight, we are grateful that Katherine is here and that she shared her mission in Nepal. You gave us your vision, your hope, and your future for the people in Nepal tonight. Now we give back to you what you have given us. Take this offering, use this to advance your kingdom and transform the lives of Nepali. Furthermore, we want to join Katherine's mission and your mission through continual prayer as well as financial support. So help us remind us of tonight's presentation. Provide us with the resources we can contribute, and above all, inspire our hearts to give, share, and love. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.